Funding for New Mexico in Focus provided by the McCune Charitable Foundation. And the Nieper Natural History Programming Fund for KNME-TV. And viewers like you.
This week on New Mexico in Focus, dealing with mental health challenges and how to reach out during the pandemic.
So if we live with those thoughts and we're all alone and we don't get feedback from other people, we then end up exacerbating the thinking.
And a postcard from the Bosque in autumn as our land returns. New Mexico in Focus starts now. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm your host, Gene Grant. To say it's been a hard year for mental health is to barely scratch the surface of what many of us are feeling and thinking as we enter a season that's traditionally been tough on a lot of people. We'll talk to an expert and to someone who's seeking counseling for the first time. We'll also check in with Congresswoman Deb Haaland about priorities for a post she's been connected to, Secretary of the Interior. The Line Opinion panel looks at the crisis at New Mexico hospitals and at businesses looking for relief. They'll also look ahead to the upcoming legislative session. We start with the changing fortunes of some of New Mexico's top political figures. Michelle Lujan Grisham has had better weeks. Once the odds-on favorite for a post in the Biden cabinet as Secretary of Health and Human Services, the governor, who was co-chair of the president-elect's transition team, by the way, apparently fell out of favor. Why that happened, we can't be certain. There are reports she was offered a cabinet job at the Department of the Interior, which didn't seem to make much sense. And there are stories that somehow she was seen as trying to orchestrate her appointment to HHS. Now, here to make some sense of that and other notable political news is our Line Opinion panel. We welcome back to our virtual table this week former state senator, head of New Mexico Working Families Party, Eric Griego. Another former state senator and Line regular, Diane Snyder, is back. And former House Minority Whip and Line regular, Daniel Foley, returns. Dan, keep that fist down. I'm going to start with you. Let's start with that whole orchestration in quotes there thing. Part one, is it bad to say no to a job she didn't feel qualified for or want?
No, not at all. I think, look, it's, we were talking off the air about an exclusive club being in the U.S. Senate of 100 people. Mm-hmm. You're in a pretty exclusive club when you're a governor if there's only 50 of them. And, when you're, as we all know, and being a cabinet member is clearly and would be an unbelievable opportunity, but giving up a chance to run the state and be the executive of a state, I think unless I was given the opportunity to take the very specific cabinet position I wanted, I'd stay right at home and be the governor of a state. I just think there's more to do. There's more opportunity. You can make a bigger change. And more importantly, you're not carrying someone else's water. You're creating the water that other people are carrying. And that's kind of that to me, that's a big factor, especially for someone who's been on the legislative side, been on the, she was a congresswoman. She's been a secretary at the state level where she's had to carry out other people's plans. Right now, it's all her plans all the way. And I just, it would have to be a pretty choice opportunity for me to say, I want to go from being the captain to being the first lieutenant.
Mm-hmm. Eric Griego, part two of that question. If she's advocating for a job she does want, is that orchestrating in your mind, or is that just how politics goes?
There's this really tricky balance between, showing interest, getting the word out, but demurring. It was a little bit like the vice presidential stakes. You have to do this dance in politics between, lining up support but not pushing too hard. Feigning, disinterest. And she was in the dance, but I think at some level, I don't think she just wanted, to Dan's point, I don't think she just wanted any job in the cabinet. She's 2 years into her governor's term. She's got, we got a lot going on here. She's the chief executive of a state. Granted, we're not a big state, but, she's still in charge of the executive branch of government, which is a pretty big deal. And, why leave that for a cabinet job that maybe, I'm sure she had she's got some background. She's worked a lot on environmental issues and conservation issues. So it wouldn't been, I think she would have been fine and competent at the Interior Department. But, her heart and her career has been around healthcare, right? She was the health secretary. It's been where she's, it's been what she's passionate about. Mm-hmm. sometimes, people forget there's a very finite number of cabinet positions, and there are literally thousands of people who are in the running. So it's not like an election where anybody steps up and just runs. It's like you gotta line up a lot of ducks. You got to get a lot of people lined up, and these things go squirrely for any number of reasons that have nothing to do with competence or it's timing. It's a whole series of factors. So
right.
She'll be fine. I think Howie. I think the lieutenant governor is kind of bummed about it. He was, I think, looking forward to maybe getting his shot, but I'm sure he'll get his shot at some point. And a lot of folks are glad she's here. I know there's some folks maybe who aren't so glad that she didn't leave.
Right.
But she'll be around for a while, I think.
Mm-hmm. Senator Snyder, CNN and Politico and others say it's either Congresswoman Haaland or Senator Udall for this interior position that's still being sort of kicked around. What's your sense of that? And my question is, the meaning there is your sense of it for New Mexico. What does New Mexico get out of it if one of those folks does get an interior nod or they don't, actually? What's the upshot for us?
Well, if they don't, I think it's going to be some very unhappy people in New Mexico because I wasn't a big supporter of either one of them, but they are New Mexicans and I want them to be successful. And so if they went out of state and went someplace else, I kind of feel the same way about the governor. She's the most qualified person I know of all the ones they mentioned. And yet she wasn't chosen. The fact that other New Mexicans are being seriously considered, at least that's what we're hearing, for the Department of the Interior, to offer that job to her, and even more if she had taken it, how disruptive that might have become to the Democratic Party in New Mexico. And I think that would have been bad. The one person you left out that I think also has a serious chance at it is Senator Heinrich. And if Senator Heinrich was chosen, then Representative Congresswoman Haaland would stay in place and Tom Udall would ride off into the sunset with his other relatives. But the piece that people don't think about, or maybe they do and haven't mentioned it, is the fact if Senator Heinrich was appointed, then Governor Lujan would be the one appointing his replacement. And it's pretty much tradition, at least in most states I've seen, is the governor appoints themselves to become that senator. Then Howie does become the governor, and the lieutenant governor, I learned, gets appointed, but it has to have Senate approval. State Senate approval before they can become the new lieutenant governor. So, and one of the things that a lot of people may not know is Governor Lujan has an elderly mother who is in care, and that's hard to go off and leave your parent. So I think all of those played into her decision, and I'm with her. If it wasn't the job I really wanted, then I've got a great one. I wouldn't be leaving it to go and just be a cabinet secretary.
Sure. Dan Foley, let's kind of what if here for just a little bit, and going back to Congresswoman Haaland, if she in fact got the nod and she accepted it, the domino is falling over in the district would be very interesting. I have to ask straight up, would that be an opportunity for Mark Ronchetti?
That seat since Heather Wilson left has been getting, it's been getting more and more, Eric Griegel's done a very good job of turning that seat more and more towards him. So, I'm not sure that there would be an opportunity for a Republican to win that seat. It would be a special election. So that means the next election that rolls up, there'd be a House seat. There'd be a House seat up. So the question is, with the legislature, with all the other stuff going on, do the Democrats lose interest? And more importantly, who their candidate is, right? I mean, if you have a seat like that, if Deb Haaland takes that job, we could probably sit here and in 30 seconds come up with 10 names that are going to throw their name in there. Yep. And I don't think you could come up with 10 Republicans that are going to throw their name in there. You might get 2. And so, you're going to wind up having an unbelievable battle to just get, the Democrat nominee out of there, even though it's not going to be done, in a primary battle. It's still going to take, there's going to be a lot of bloodletting to get that representative. But I don't think the Republicans have a chance. I don't think Deb Haaland's going to get the job. Right. I think it's going to go to Tom Udall. It's the easiest transition, right? He's already announced his retirement. You got people running for the seat. I mean, it just seems, and he fits a long line of Udalls that have been Department of Interior folks. So, I mean, I would see him doing it. It'd be interesting to see a New Mexican be the first Native American to get that position.
Sure.
That would be an interesting kudos. That would be something that would be in the record books for New Mexico.
Let me hustle a couple of other things here real quick. I want to get to Steve Pearce being elected to another term as party chair. Eric, let me start with you. Most of the other top choices, pretty conservative, Trump-supporting names. What did it for him? There's been so much controversy around Steve Pearce over this past tenure, but he's back in.
Yeah, I was surprised, honestly, because I do have a few Republican friends, including Dan, who were not huge fans of Steve Pearce. And given the outcome of the election, I mean, I guess you could claim, picking up that congressional seat down south was a win. But they lost a seat in the Senate. They narrowly picked up a seat in the House, but overall, the body, both the House and the Senate, moved in a much more, I think, progressive direction, according to if you believe, sort of what people are saying, and which I do. CD1, it was trounced. I mean, if there was any opportunity to move that, make that even a close race, they got Deb Haaland, who frankly has been a pretty liberal, progressive, pro-conservation congressional member. You would think that if there was any swinginess to CD1, that would have gone in a more Republican direction. So
Eric,
I feel
do
like
me a favor. I need to swing in the other two here real quick. I want to get their opinion on this situation. We're just getting a little crunchy on time. Senator Snyder, your sense of the Steve Pearce re-election in his future, another run for governor in there, or how do you see this all working out?
I don't know anything specifically, but that would be the most logical step to me if that was what he was doing. I will say that many of the candidates that I've talked to, they got more help this year from the party than they than we got many years ago. And so the campaign they put together with Steve McKee and his folks of the Respect New Mexico was a great beginning. Unfortunately, I'm one of those people that I wanted to have a call to action in that campaign. And I didn't feel like we got that, which is very, very important, because you saw the Democratic Party going out and doing that call to action, registering people to vote, getting them out.
Let me do this. We're going to pick up some of that stuff in another segment here, a little quick. But Dan, real quick, 20 seconds if you can on Steve Pearce. How deep is the party's bench?
Well, there's no party bench. I mean, you asked Eric how he won the election. Well, when you hold the election offline and you count the votes in a back room, you can always win an election. We've seen that work in every third world country in America. I disagree with Senator Snyder. I think that, we have a guy who ran at the top of the ticket for the U.S. Senate, came pretty respectable in a race against Ben Ray Lujan, who's a very well-known name. Zero help from the state party. No help from the state party. The state party has turned into a group of, if you're not on the in crowd, if you're not one of the cool kids, you're not part of it. They're doing nothing to build the bench. They're doing nothing to bring people to the party. At a time when Republicans were winning congressional seats across the country, clearly the one thing we learned this last election cycle, they don't like President Trump, but the Republican message is not a bad message right now, except in New Mexico. And I think, if you're going to do that, if Steve Pearce ran for party chair so that he could run for governor, I would tell you this: if he makes it through the primary for whatever seat he's running for, it's an automatic victory for a Democrat candidate.
We're out of time. We'll have to leave that there. We're back talking COVID in a few minutes. Up next, we talk to Congresswoman Deb Haaland.
As the trees drop their leaves, it's easier to spot porcupines napping in cottonwoods and elm trees, or gnawing on bark, or finding the seeds of Russian olives.
As of this moment, on Thursday, when we record our show, the short list for Joe Biden's Secretary of the Interior is just 2 people, both New Mexicans. Last week, you heard from outgoing Senator Tom Udall, who this Tuesday called the Senate, quote, broken in his farewell address. This week, we chatted with Deb Haaland, the other name on that list. Correspondent Laura Paskus talked with the Congresswoman about the post, what the agenda should be for the administration, and the importance of consulting Native tribes.
Representative Holland, thank you so much for joining me today. It's lovely to see you and I appreciate your time. You've been mentioned as a pick for the Biden administration to lead the U.S. Department of the Interior. I'm curious whether that's you or somebody else leading the agency. What are some of the priorities that you feel are critical for the coming years for that agency?
So when I think about the work that I've done here in Congress over the past term, I'm on the Natural Resources Committee, and we have oversight over the Department of Interior. And we've had a number of administrative, folks come in so we could ask them questions about why they're doing X, Y, and Z. One of the things that was so prevalent in this Trump administration is the fact that these folks threw tribal consultation out the window. Tribal consultation is a mandate, essentially. The federal government, the presidential administration has an obligation to consult with tribes before they make decisions that would have an effect on these tribes. And the Trump administration, they've cut off big swaths of our public lands, gutted the EPA, and these have effects not just on tribes. And yes, they shouldn't be consulting with tribes, but they've had large effects on our public lands for the people who want to enjoy those public lands. Right now, the President-elect Biden has a climate plan and an environmental plan that is progressive, that addresses climate change and this crisis that we are going through right now. And I think whoever gets picked for the Department of the Interior will have a very clear agenda to move forward on that would protect our country, that would help our people, that would listen to Indian tribes, that would ensure that our pristine places continue to be protected. And so I look so forward to January 20th when Joe Biden is sworn in as our next president. And I believe wholeheartedly that whoever he decides to lead this department will essentially have a clear agenda on what to do.
The news from the front lines in the fight against COVID-19 is grim. Yes, a small number of vaccines are on the way to New Mexico, but deaths have barely abated and hospitals are really at their limit. So much so that Governor Lujan Grisham last week signed an order allowing hospitals to abandon their usual and legally required standards of care to move into crisis mode. And Eric, the state planned for this eventuality, certainly, but truly hoped to avoid it. What do you think hearing the news that hospitals might simply not be able to treat someone who is COVID, what's that going to do to behavior? Will that do anything? Is this a big enough deal for folks out there?
Well, I certainly hope so. I keep waiting for the thing that's going to make people to take it more seriously, right? And it's just, I'm still shocked that we can't wrap our brains around it, that we're still having this debate about, there's got to be a magic way to still get around the science, right? And it's just shocking to me how much abuse the governor and the public health folks have taken for just trying to protect folks. Like, I get it. Like, we support small businesses, but there's got to be, if we're ever going to get past this, we've got to agree as a community, as a species, that this is going to be hard for a while, but let's get past it so we can get back to normal life. And, this is yet another huge red flag, and I'm hoping I see changes in behavior. But every day I walk out to walk my dog and I'll see people, walking around with no masks. And I'm just like, what's it going to take? Mm-hmm. It's just, there's this cognitive dissonance that's still happening with a lot of folks here and all around the country, all around the world. It's not just a New Mexico thing, I'm really worried that I hope this will finally hit home for folks, that we got to take this seriously. And if we do it just for a few months, right, we can get past this, right? Well,
the president-elect is asking for 100 days. And Senator Snyder, the concept of rationed care, that is just antithetical to most folks or anybody in the medical business. Have you been hearing from folks in the medical business? I know you deal with a lot of folks out there.
One of the things they're happy about is being allowed, like the standard of care is now, because we've got a shortage of healthcare who can deal with the COVID or are dealing with the COVID patients.
Right.
And so, and this is probably a poor example, but it would allow a pediatrician who is an MD to move over and meet that standard of care of taking care of COVID people.
Mm-hmm.
That if you have, and it would also allow retired physicians and nurses and healthcare providers of all kinds to come back in and help, because it allows a little flexibility of having the numbers of people, because that's one of the particular problems we have in New Mexico. We all know we don't have enough physicians or nurses or any of those people. So that does allow them a little flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get into saying rationing care and saying you can have it, but you can't have it, I think that becomes a very serious issue for the public.
Mm-hmm.
I think because one of the things they're saying is if you have underlying conditions, then you're not as likely, they don't believe that you would have as good a chance of surviving. And considering I have an underlying condition,
mm-hmm.
that kind of makes me a little concerned about that and worrying about how can we handle, and are we just saying, okay, all the old people won't get any ventilators or get care? And I'm not saying it means that,
Sure.
but the public will think that at some point. So one of the things that I think we do need to do, and I did hear the New Mexico Medical Society say, is we have to have some protection, not of malfeasance, that's
Right.
different,
Right.
but protections because of the unique situation of the disease. So
Yeah.
our healthcare providers need some kind of help.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Dan, the idea the big hospitals are under stress, you can't help thinking about the smaller hospitals in the rural parts of our state, and the ping-ponging back and forth. If you don't have beds in Quay County, you have to bring somebody somewhere, and that's probably going to be Bernalillo County, but we're out of beds too. You see the dilemma here? And so the same question I asked Eric, is this the final thing to get folks to change some behavior here?
No, I think it's just adding to, look, I agree with what Eric said. I mask up, socially distance, do the things we need to do. I don't believe this is some, crazy government conspiracy. I will say that at all levels, both Republicans and Democrats on the government side have handled this thing disastrously. I mean, when you're hearing conflicting messages, when you're getting conflicting numbers, when you're hearing things like just the other day, I'm looking online and we're at 800 and something COVID beds in New Mexico, right? I mean, the hospital is full. We got 800 people. I think we hit 1,000 the other day. There's 1,000 people and the hospital's overflowing. Then you go online and you look at just the acute care beds in the state of New Mexico, almost 5,000. So I'm like, so if you got 1,000 people in there with COVID, do we have 4,000 other people in there with other things? And then there's constant anecdotal.
Well, there's the staffing issues that have to go with those beds. That's
staff. Those, just so you know, Gene, those 5,000 beds that are on the Department of Health's websites is not the number of beds that are out there in a building. They're the number of beds that are staffed. It's the staffed beds. There's multiple more beds. There's a significantly higher number of beds that we don't have the staffing for. And which leads you to the other question, right, is why does it take this pandemic? We've been talking about doctor problems in New Mexico since I've been a kid, right? I mean, if it wasn't for the J1 visa program, we wouldn't have doctors in southeastern New Mexico in towns like Roswell. We have zero retention of keeping these doctors here. So I think that one of the things that I'm hoping is going to happen eventually is at some point everybody's got to put down their political spear and stop the fighting and say, okay, listen, how do we fix this? And
let me make a suggestion. Maybe it's about money. And let me ask Senator Griego about that.
I think money's a big part of it, Gene, but I would also say I would say both sides have taken this crisis to politicize it, and I think that turns the average American off.
There you go. Senator Griego, the state announced a $100 million grant program that's going to be rolling out this week for businesses impacted by COVID, but it has to be used quickly. It's a short application window. Your sense of how the state has helped businesses and others here, is this too much, too little, too late? Is this just in time? What's your sense of the $100 million?
I feel like if you add the city stuff
state stuff. There's a lot of federal money that's been dispersed. I think people have tried to help. I mean, obviously, it's a tough impact on small and local businesses, it's particularly, right? But it's not. It hasn't been for lack of trying to get money to them. I mean, there's also been some serious administrative and issues at the federal level in terms of some of that CARES Act money and the PPE money and so on. But I think that the frame of this has to be public health, not, there's a lot of dominance, like what are we going to do for business? What are we going to do for business? What are we going to do for business? We're in a public health crisis. So we got to be talking about fixing that, and then we can get back to business, right? So I do think that there seems to be this overemphasis on, geez, we just, what can we do? And so I'm hoping that part of this conversation is, and I just noticed in re-upping the federal CARES Act that they left out the paid sick leave. Like there's got to be a realization that we're never going to get the economy back on track as long as we keep sending sick people into workplaces, especially essential workers in restaurants and in retail and grocery stores, right? So we should be having this conversation in a much more comprehensive way. It's not just about helping businesses through; it's about protecting public health and making sure workers can get through it, right? Because the economy is never going to recover if all your workers are sick.
That's a good point there. We're out of time on that issue. We're back in a few minutes to look ahead to the issues and faces that will take center stage at the state capitol next month. By now, we are all familiar with the unending loneliness or togetherness, silence or din of life during this pandemic. Small annoyances might have become major issues. The same goes for troublesome tendencies. Now, experts say it's best to talk about what you're feeling and how you're handling life spent largely at home or life spent up close and personal with COVID-19. That's not always easy to do, especially in a state that's traditionally underserved like New Mexico. Correspondent Megan Kemrick spoke this week to a psychologist and a man who's seeking counseling for the first time.
Thank you for joining us, Ryan and Dr. Chavez. Ryan, I want to start with you. You've been seeking therapy for the first time, right? Can you tell us about that experience?
Yes, I was feeling very depressed recently within the last month or two, and it got to the point where it was affecting my personal relationships. And that was the point where I decided to go to the doctor, set up an appointment, and seek treatment. And
go ahead.
It was a difficult process, I must say.
Why was that? How long did it take you to get an appointment?
I originally scheduled an appointment, and then when I went in, they told me that there was no appointment scheduled. So then I had to schedule a consecutive meeting. And then when I went in, I wasn't able to see a therapist in person until December. And after a couple of weeks, they called me and rescheduled into January. So I won't be seeing a therapist until January 12th.
Wow, that's a long time. So that must be really frustrating to wait that long to talk to someone, especially when you thought you were going to go in and talk to someone that day. How are you coping in the meantime? I'm
doing all right. They prescribed me some antidepressants, and that's doing pretty well for me. I'm trying to stay busy and stay motivated. In the meantime, trying to keep myself preoccupied. So distract myself from that. But it's difficult, and I would like to be able to seek counsel for my sake and for the sake of my relationships.
Definitely. I can understand that. Dr. Chavez, could you talk broadly about how this cocktail of cold weather, short winter days, and this ongoing pandemic can impact our mental health?
Yes, well, great question. And Ryan, I'm sorry to hear about your situation. That's sort of, I don't want to say it's par for New Mexico, but a lot of that is going on. When we're looking at the pandemic that we're dealing with, which a lot of people came up with a new concept of pandemic fatigue. Not only is a pandemic alone creating confusion, so many mixed messages from so many different sources, we don't know in many cases which one to believe. Or are you ridiculed for wearing a mask? Are you not? Is it helping? Is it not? There's all these other things. So you throw some anxiety into that mix, or depression, or anger, or frustration. You then are creating sort of this mixture of uncertainty. And that is really difficult to deal with. I understand that for sure. And so when we think of the pandemic itself, trying to deal with it measurably by let's say start with masks, for example. Okay, whether somebody feels it's going to help or not, is it going to hurt to use it? Probably not. So let's start to kind of chip away at what is making us feel the way we feel. In my line of therapy, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, we look at thoughts which affect emotion, which manifests a behavior or an action. So if the thoughts are distorted, along comes this emotion that might be a negative emotion like suicidality or anger or, going out and doing something crazy. And so if we can learn to adjust our thoughts first and not directly go after the emotion, because when you know this in talking to a child who's emoting, they get worse the more you talk to them because they're emoting. That has to settle down. The thought has to increase. And then all of a sudden we have a little more clarity of understanding or a cognitive sort of basis of understanding. And so there's a lot of multiple things going on with this pandemic that we sort of need to address. But number one, the fact that we're stuck at home, so all of a sudden here comes cabin fever and people are either working at home and arguing with each other because they're not used to seeing face to face all the time. And those that come home, the healthcare workers who come home and they can't hug their family. And that tactile connection is so important to survival just of our species, of being able to feel that hug or that kiss or something to regroup internally, mentally, physically, emotionally, and in some cases spiritually.
A lot of people are struggling, like Ryan, to get counseling appointments during the pandemic. Why do you think this is happening? Are you seeing this?
Well, right now I am seeing that. And part of what's happening is when we talk about healthcare workers, mental healthcare workers are sort of in a similar boat in that we're getting, for example, in my case, I've had people call me who I discharged 3 years ago who had anxiety or depression. And all of a sudden they're saying, I'm getting some recurrent or some things are coming back to me and I'm feeling, scared, anxious, angry, paranoid or whatever, or maybe in some rare cases, some suicidality. And so, yes, without a doubt, this is what's going on. Now, there are a number of ways to deal with that. And I mean, I'm glad that you got medication, Ryan. That's really cool, man. That was really a good move on everybody's part. On the other hand, if you contact your provider, whoever that might be, or your insurance company that has providers, I would definitely ask them if there's any other people taking clients now. If they're not, get on somebody's waiting list. And for example, right now I'll have openings. I had one, for example, today that we filled immediately, but because now, even with the fact that people are trying to get in, there are people who are canceling appointments periodically because they, for example, don't want to leave the house, or they don't want to do it on a video chat, or they don't want to do it on the phone. So there's a lot of variables because there's a lot of uncertainties in the world right now, especially with the pandemic. So I would definitely let your provider know and say, listen, please let me be on your wait list because this, I need these certain things. So by all means, that's what I'm telling people to do. And some people are getting their appointments that way.
Are you seeing people in person?
I am seeing people in person periodically. I have a big enough office that I could do that. We require masks, hand sanitizer. We take their temperature, any predisposition, stuff like that we're very cautious of. But I would say probably over 60% are either on phone or on Skype.
And what can people do while they're waiting for appointments, like Ryan, if they can't get in? What kinds of things, any tips you have for them?
Yes. So depending on what you normally do, for example, there's some people who are spiritual type folks. They may deal with people in their church or their whatever. That's one component. Letting family know what's happening. Because if we seclude, we end up creating and following those distorted thoughts I was talking about earlier. So if we live with those thoughts and we're all alone and we don't get feedback from other people, we then end up exacerbating the thinking, which then exacerbates the emotion, which then may exacerbate the desire to drink or to oversleep or to not get out of bed or not bathe. And so we need to create this sort of connection with people. So that would be the first thing. You know, if you live alone, connect with folks. I know we can't do it face to face always, but connection with people is really probably the number one thing. And check in with your primary care doctor if you cannot get a therapist or a psychologist or psychiatrist. And that way they might be able to, in the case of medication, they could prescribe something for that if it's not from a mental health practitioner, but from your primary care will have stuff in their formulary, medications to help you.
There are a number of crisis lines as well. The Warm Line in New Mexico,
Exactly.
Agora, So
and also bibliotherapy is not bad either. Books that are available now. You want to be very aware of what you're getting online, because that's the other thing that's, I think, causing panic within the pandemic. Is we'll read something online and it says this. Well, if you're going to do that, make sure that you're looking at things that are reputable and journals that are juried. Like Google Scholar is probably a little cleaner than Google itself. Check out Medscape, different things that would give you things that you can actually rely on that are tested and reliable and valid information, instead of some guy who's putting stuff out because he feels like it on something. So be very cautious of that.
Ryan, do any of those tips and resources appeal to you? Would you add anything to them?
No, that sounds really helpful. I'd definitely like to try that.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you've been doing right now for self-care while you wait to see someone, in addition to getting medication?
I've been trying to work on a lot of art projects, doing commission work. I like to do charcoal portraits, and that's helped me.
Wow.
It's very therapeutic to me. But even then, it's been difficult to stay motivated.
The other hat I wear is I'm a musician. And so it's real important that when you talk about creative side as an artist, okay, to access that, because as well as I do, sometimes your creativity can be clouded by how we're feeling, which was then created by thoughts of like, where am I at? What's going on? When's this going to end? And so sometimes art grows out of that, obviously. So in some cases, art grows out. On the other hand, collaboration is very important. So if you have a circle of people, like now as musicians, they can trade everything back online. So that's kind of creative. You see the different talk shows, John Batista and Steve Colbert, they have their band, everybody's at home playing. So if you have a love of something, by all means do that. And if you're not a person who meditates, I would suggest you maybe look into meditation or look at things you could do on your own, whether it's Tai Chi or any sort of thing that allows you for your body not to take over and for you to control your body and your mind.
Dr. Chavez, how can people support their loved ones or friends or coworkers if they sense something might be off with their mental health?
The L word, which is to listen. Okay. Trying to fix it right off the bat does not always work. When we say, oh no, I know exactly how you feel. That's not what they want to hear. What they want to hear is that you're hearing them and being able to talk, even if you're going on for a while about this and that, because what you're doing as you're doing that is you're rearranging how you're thinking to then guide how you're feeling. So if somebody wants to talk to you, let them talk, let them say what they're saying. And then when it's over, you might say, well, what I heard you say was, to make sure that what you heard was what they meant to say. And where they may say, oh, no, what I meant was this. Because, if it's sounding very crucial or possibly going to a dark area, that's when you might say, hey, well, listen, do you think maybe you need to speak to a mental health professional? Or, in some cases in the past, I would say maybe month and a half, I've probably sent around 4 or 5 people to the ER who were, at that point where they weren't quite sure what they were going to do. And so, but with listen. That's the best thing you can do for people right now. And don't always sit there trying to fix that, but listen to it. And then in the process of the collaboration, we might be able to at least arrive at a point where we mellow things out a little.
And ask them if they need help or how you can help.
Exactly. What can I do? Instead of directing them.
That's a great point. Thank you so much. We just have about a minute left. Ryan, you're new to the world of counseling. How did you view it beforehand, and what about now? How's your views changed during the pandemic?
I thought that I was able to handle it myself. And I used my girlfriend a lot to help me. Well, she helped me a lot. She counseled me, and she said, finally, I'm not a professional. And while I can listen to you, I might not have the answers that you're looking for. So I think it would be best that you go and seek professional help, so that we can all have a healthy discussion about it and get me the proper care that I need.
So that's shifted for you. Sounds like you're looking forward to getting engaged in this.
Certainly. Yeah, I think it's going to be really helpful. And in the long run, I think it can certainly help.
I want to thank you both for coming and talking about these important issues. And hopefully we can encourage people who are facing similar problems to seek resources, to reach out when they need help. We'll try and get some of those resources online. But thank you both so much for coming and talking about those.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Ryan. Good luck with your treatment.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Like New Mexicans, the Bosque, the Rio Grande, they are resilient. This river has flowed for millennia. These cottonwoods have stood since the 1940s.
Oil prices are still slumping, unemployment is still up, and while generally we'd say the economic picture right now is not a pretty one, the outlook for the state's finances is unexpectedly optimistic. This week, lawmakers heard that economists expect more money to be available for the next budget when they arrive at the Capitol, in person or online, of course, for the legislative session. And Diane Snyder, a couple things here. One, there's almost $170 million in new money for the next year's budget. And two, state reserves are expected to be at better than 30%. That's a pretty rosy outlook. How can lawmakers turn that money into making life better for New Mexicans?
Well, spend it on helping the small businesses for one thing, but I think the thing that we need to be very careful about is we know that if the incoming administration is the one that actually takes place, then they have made it very clear, and I don't care how you state it, they've made it very clear that they will not be the big supporters of the oil and gas industry. And since we rely so much on that, I think that our legislators in this coming session have to balance the current need with what the possibility of having little to no money coming in next year. Because, and one of the things, if the COVID continues, then gross receipts taxes will be going down. Taxes of all kinds will be going down. So that will reduce the amount of income coming in. And then you get into who's going to be in charge of the money. I mean, we all know there are going to be major changes in the staffing, starting with the president pro tem. One of the things that I find interesting is the total change in the Republican Party in the Senate, is how so I don't know if there are going to be new alliances or if there are going to be all-out battles to get the money and where it's going to be.
Yeah, that's a good
so
question.
I think it's going to be a difficult time.
Yep. I appreciate having three ex-legislators, by the way, talking about this subject. This is interesting, budget issues. And Senator Griego, Senator Snyder just made an interesting point. We may be looking good now, but do we have a bit of a lit fuse in the background, meaning a lot of the gross receipts have plummeted upwards of 40%, and so down the road, whatever money we have is going to be gone? How do you see this from your ex-legislator point of view?
Well, the one thing we haven't talked about is there in the bill that's likely to pass, hopefully, Congress, is a pretty substantial chunk for state governments. It's north of $1 billion, $1.5 billion actually. So if that happens, and that isn't derailed with all the politics happening in Washington, that there's going to be a big federal piece to this that's going to help us through the next year. We just have to get through this next year, right? Look, oil and gas, regardless of...
Let me stop you there. When you say just have to get through this next year, do you mean you're assuming a rebound back to previous COVID levels or around the corner?
No, I think the economy, most people think, including the forecasts that you heard, are that if we can get through the next year with some help from the federal stimulus, everybody, the inevitability of the oil and gas sector is that it's phasing out regardless. They're not, there is no magic bullet. Even if we all decided like we're going to do a single renewable energy, green energy thing, it's not sustainable. The industry itself is not sustainable. So as we ramp up green energy, as we diversify our economy into lots of other sectors, that's how the economy is going to adjust. It's something we should have been doing for the last 20 years. But that transition is already happening. You saw the Netflix things happen. There's a lot of industries that are really going to start to really diversify the New Mexico economy. And we've been kind of forced into it. But even without this pandemic, we have to transition away from those revenue streams. The federal government hopefully will help us through this really tough period that we're going to have in the next year. The fact that there is a big chunk of reserves is going to help us. And I think it's just really, honestly, it's making it through the next year and a half and then really kind of reconfiguring our economy as we've already started doing to really rely on a much more diverse set of revenue sources. And one more thing, like we've got to really take a look at where our tax structure again, because there is still a really not so progressive tax structure, and we have to pass things like capital gains reform. We have to ask the richest folks in the state to do more, and we have to roll back some of those corporate tax cuts that never have really come to fruition in terms of jobs. If we really diversify our revenue streams, we don't have to be so reliant on oil and gas, and we can actually get to a long-term sustainable budget.
Dan Foley, let me pivot here a little bit. Interesting. Senator Snyder made mention of this. A lot of new faces in the legislature coming up this next session. Who's going to be the difference maker up there in your view? What person are you going to be watching closely?
Well, clearly you're going to have to watch the new Senate Republican leader. I mean, that's that's been Stuart Ingalls since I think Christ was a choir boy, and so that's going to be a different. That's going to be a definite change. I mean, Stuart. People don't realize that from the stories that I was told when I first got up there that when Stuart first got elected, him and Tim Jennings shared an office together. The way it was set up, that they actually worked together in the same office. So you have kind of the old guard, get along, come to compromise type stuff.
How about Mimi Stewart? How about Mimi Stewart? What do you think the impact of her is going to be?
Oh, listen, Mimi was progressive before progressive was cool. I mean, when I was in the legislature, we just called her far left. Mimi, I hope that Comrade Eric and his group are recognizing Mimi for her foundation of progressivism in New Mexico at some point, because she was doing this progressive stuff long before anybody else would talk about it. I mean, I remember when I was in the legislature, Mimi was the outlier, right? Mimi was that's the far left over there, and so I think that the one thing I will say though is don't underestimate her.
Okay.
And now that she's in a leadership position, I can tell you right now that woman right there can wield some power and is going to be very effective. I think also at the end of the day, Eric threw a lot out there, and I'm not going to get in all of that with Eric, but I think that at the end of the day, we have to remember this. By Constitution, we have to have a balanced budget. There's a reason why you're hearing from the economists like you do now. They work for the legislature. And, every time that I was there, you got those guys in there. Everything is based on oil and gas. And you just squeeze those guys until you come up with the number you need to back into the budget you want. So, I think that Eric's not wrong on his diversifying the economy. But, when you're diversifying the economy, it's really not a theory of if you build it, they will come. You got to have a plan. And, when we start looking at attracting sustainable jobs and bringing people to this state, we don't have water. We don't have the things that are needed. We have a horrible crime situation. I mean, businesses are not wanting to relocate here. So,
let me jump in here real quick and let me ask Eric about the same question about Mimi Stewart. There's a lot of things on the table. Early childhood disbursements from the land grant permanent fund, as you know, repealed the abortion decriminalization. There's a lot of things. Recreational marijuana. I can't, ignore that. What's your sense of the impact Mimi Stewart's going to have in this new position?
Oh, she's a force. I mean, she's got as much experience as anybody up there, and she's tenacious. I think she is progressive. I think that she understands that she's got to be representing as the entire body. The pro tem is supposed to work with everybody, but she also knows, because she's been fighting for this stuff for 20 years. The time has come that for this disinvestment that we've had in a lot of the basic human capital investments we've been talking about for a generation, like early childhood, like really obviously repealing that draconian abortion law, like legalizing like marijuana, that we can actually do it in a way that's responsible and regulated, but also generate some revenue. So I think not just Mimi, but the leadership team. You have a lot of experience in the new Senate leadership team.
Mm-hmm.
Same majority leader, but you also have Linda Lopez now as whip, who's been in the Senate a long time as well. And then this new freshman class, 7 new freshmen, Democrats, all of whom are already getting really organized. They're really smart, really passionate, and I think they're going to be a force in and of themselves. So I think what we're going to see is a lot of pent-up legislation that should have been passed 10 years ago is going to pass, including the constitutional amendment for early
10 years ago. Isn't that when you were in the Senate? Isn't that
exactly? Well, that's what the first.
All these new senators are really highly educated because they're taking the Griego mantra and they're going forward.
Finally, they're catching on. But the permanent fund. Just last thing, Gene. The permanent fund. Has been pretty stable. It's close to $20 billion, and we still keep saying we can't touch it, we can't touch it, we can't touch it. And this is the year that I think we're going to touch it, and we're going to actually invest in kids 0 to 5, and there may be some more for K-12 in there as well. So in addition to all this other fundraising, remember we're sitting on a $20 billion fund that we can afford to take a little more out of.
Mm-hmm. Senator, if you could do it in 10 seconds. Mm-hmm.
10 seconds. One thing you need to remember, all these companies coming in, think about all the incentives we're giving them, and who's paying for that? It's oil and gas money that we're paying it for. So before there's a time lapse between getting them here and making them profitable to income coming into the state.
Fair enough. Hey guys, thanks to all as panelists for keeping on top of the news this week. Our Land is next. Finally, this week as we wind down towards the end of the year, the Our Land crew wanted to offer you a break from the hard news of climate change, COVID, and politics. In this month's episode, correspondent Laura Paskus takes you to the Bosque in Albuquerque. It's a favorite summertime spot, but in fall and winter, it's easiest to spot not just sandhill cranes and migratory birds, but porcupines, beavers, and more. Enjoy.
In the Bosque along the Rio Grande, throughout the spring and the summer, we seek out the cottonwoods for shade, rely on the river for sustenance, to water our fields, or to cool our bodies from the noonday sun. In the autumn, we celebrate the brilliance of the cottonwoods when their canopies fire the riverbanks with yellow. But by late October, especially as night starts falling earlier, it's easy to take the Bosque for granted, or to stop walking beneath its canopy altogether. But I think it's the best time of year to be here. As the trees drop their leaves, it's easier to spot porcupines napping in cottonwoods and elm trees, or gnawing on bark, or finding the seeds of Russian olives. In the sands along the bank, you can see where beavers have lugged branches, dropped into the current of the river, or excavated holes to reach the tasty roots of tamarisk seedlings. Beavers themselves are hard to spot, but there are signs of their industriousness everywhere. Coyotes call out earlier in the evening, celebrating their hunt, or maybe just singing to the night. Massive mobs of crows that winter in the middle Rio Grande Valley, their numbers too big to even call murders, roost at night in the Bosque. They spend their days spread out across the city feeding, and then return to the Bosque at night, hundreds of them settling into the trees, walk through their ranks, and they'll yell at you, drop nuts and small branches on your head too. And of course, late fall is when the sandhill cranes return to the valley for winter. Today we appreciate their primordial calls, and the clunky grace of their landings in the river, where they shelter for the night away from predators. They've migrated here for thousands and thousands and thousands of generations. Their habits as clear as the layers of limestone in the Sandia Mountains, their patterns tied inextricably to the sway of seasons. Today, watching the cranes along the river, it's something to imagine the blessing they must have been to the people who lived alongside the Rio Grande for centuries. To think of their mass arrival along with snow geese precisely as the weather turned cold and harvest season passed. Like New Mexicans, the Bosque, the Rio Grande, they are resilient. This river has flowed for millennia. These cottonwoods have stood since the 1940s. The forest, the wildlife have all survived the press of more and more people, more and more demands. But as the region warms, as the region dries, and everyone and everything demands more water, we also need to demand more for the river, more for the Bosque. And remember, this too is our home. For New Mexico in Focus and Our Land, I'm Laura Paskus.
Harold V. Rhodes passed away late last month. It's a loss for the UNM family, where Hal was a political science professor for 2 decades. It's a loss as well for the New Mexico PBS family, where it could be argued Hal Rhodes changed the local news reporting landscape. He was that prolific. From right here in this studio, Hal hosted and produced the nightly show, The Illustrated Daily, and the KNME weekly show many of you remember, On Assignment. It's an extraordinary commitment. I don't mind telling you, I'm a bit in awe of it. Here's a bit of Hal from On Assignment.
These stories next, On Assignment, with Hal Rhodes.
Good evening. This is a story about economic and environmental interest in conflict, and according to some, about political timidity and bureaucratic buck-passing. Slipping through the cracks in any event is the opportunity to reintroduce to its natural habitat the all but extinct Mexican gray wolf, the legendary lobo, which until early in this century roamed vast areas of Texas and Arizona and our own New Mexico.
Along the way, Hal Rhodes won a regional Emmy and wrote for many years for the New Mexico News Services. Now, legacy doesn't come easy or often, but Hal Rhodes left an indelible mark on a university, a television station, and our community. It's a legacy that is deserving of the word. Thanks again for joining us and for staying informed and engaged. We'll see you again next week in Focus.
Funding for New Mexico in Focus provided by the McCune Charitable Foundation. And the Nieper Natural History Programming Fund for KNME TV. And viewers like you.